So just waiting. Voilà. So, good Mittag, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure for us to welcome here today in Luxembourg the Prime Minister of Ireland. And of course, it's not easy neither to pronounce your title nor your name, but it's Taoiseach. Was that correct?
Excellent.
You see? Micheál.
Superb.
Martin. I managed. No, I have to say that welcoming the Prime Minister of Ireland is very important to us because Ireland is a friend as a country, and the Prime Minister and I get along very well in the European Council. I arrived in the European Council a little before the Prime Minister, but he was there before me at a previous time. So, and I must say what I like and what was confirmed again today in this very intensive working meeting that we had is that Ireland and Luxembourg are aligned very much so on many issues. When it comes to the international situation, when it is about values, both in the world and in Europe, when it is about fundamental principles, when it is about sharing a very pro-European view, also when it comes to cross-border economic activities, Ireland and Luxembourg stand on the same side and are very much on the same opinion. And that is very important in a Europe of 27, that you have friends, that you have countries with whom you can discuss how to move forward on the European agenda. And therefore the meeting today matters a lot to us, both to discuss international issues, European issues, and bilateral issues. On international issues, we discussed, among others, the situation in Ukraine, where we both agree that we need to continue to support Ukrainian people. They are fighting for themselves, but they're also fighting for us, for the fundamental principles we believe in. We have discussed the situation in the Middle East, and I can say here what I said at the earlier press conference today as well, that we are very concerned about the humanitarian situation in Gaza, that we strongly encourage all countries in the region, and in particular ask that the Israelis allow immediate humanitarian aid to the civilian population in Gaza. They are suffering. It's terrible to see these images of people dying from hunger. We cannot let this happen, and we need to, as a European Union and also as Luxembourg, to do a maximum to see the situation improving on the ground, to see a ceasefire. And I can also say again here what I told also the Irish Prime Minister, that my country is moving forward on the issue of the two-state solution. We think that that is the only way forward to have sustainable peace in the region, and therefore we will support all efforts of the international community in that direction. Later this month in New York, but in particular also in September in the margins of the UN General Assembly. We discussed on the bilateral issue quite a lot of topics. We explored ways to increase our cooperation in renewable energy, which is very important for my government. We want to increase the production of renewable energy, both at home and what we can acquire from abroad. We discussed possible cooperation in the defense sector. Luxembourg does not have historically defense industry, but I think there will be a number of companies, dual-use products that might be produced by companies in our country, and I think these are areas where we can cooperate with our friends in Ireland. In that context, I mentioned to the Irish Prime Minister the decision that we took to launch a new government satellite for communications, both for government communications and military communications, and possibly there we can also work together. We also both believe that we need to deepen the single market, because the single market for smaller countries and even for larger countries is a huge market which will contribute to growth. So tearing down the barriers of still existing barriers within the single market is for us an important issue where we are happy to see that Ireland shares those views. Also competitiveness, making the diminishing the administrative burden that rests on companies is extremely important, and we need to develop the Savings and Investment Union, formerly called the Capital Markets Union, is extremely important for us. Both Ireland and Luxembourg are important investment funds centers, so that is already the embryo of a Capital Markets Union, and we think that we must make progress on that. We must make progress on, for instance, securitization. We must make progress on financial literacy. We must identify areas where we can realize the Savings and Investment Union, and we should not lose a lot of time with discussing centralization of supervision. These are issues that will not make the Savings and Investment Union work better. We will only lose time with such discussions. What we should do in that area of supervision is that we should try to align the supervisory rules so that each country applies the same rules, but we should build on the know-how of financial centers such as Luxembourg and Dublin and maybe some others to make progress in this area. So you see that I could expand this list of topics that we discussed. There are so many issues that bring us together, and I can tell you that I'm very grateful that you came to Luxembourg. The cooperation, of course, between our countries did not start today. It started a long time ago when Willebrod came from Ireland to Luxembourg, and that's why I look forward also afterwards, after this more intensive working meeting, to show the Prime Minister Echternach. And I think this is a cultural, historical clin d'oeil to Ireland, which we cherish very much. But I think we have a rich history. We have seen in the European Council, I saw it also when I served as Minister of Finance, that we can do a lot together. Even if we are sometimes competitors, we can achieve a lot together. And for me, Ireland and Luxembourg in financial services is a little bit like Mercedes and BMW. They are competitors, yes, but at the same time they share a lot of common objectives, a lot of common interest when it is about defining the rules of the market of Europe of tomorrow, and that is the spirit with which I want again to welcome you here, to thank you for the time you took to visit Luxembourg, and I look forward to cooperating with you in the future.
Thank you. Just to say thank you very much, Luke, and to say that I'm delighted and very pleased to be here in Luxembourg today to visit Prime Minister Frieden, and my sincere thanks to you, Luke, in the first instance for hosting me and for your hospitality. And of course, Ireland's values and Luxembourg's values are really joined at the hip in many, many areas. We have a strong relationship. We have a very good bilateral one in particular, reflected in good cooperation in audiovisual and film, for example, in food. Irish beef finds its way onto the market here as well, and of course fintech. But above all, in terms of the European Union Council and in terms of the global world, we share fundamental values of democracy, rule of law. These are non-negotiable for both our countries, and we will always speak up for the defence and the promotion of human rights. And I do look forward to visiting Echternach later to hear more about the very significant historic and cultural links between our two countries, the important role in the 7th century of the Ra Melchigi Monastery in County Carlow, in the ecclesiastical training of Luxembourg's patron saint, Saint Willibrord. And I'm particularly looking forward to that because my public representatives in Carlow have been here, actually, and have developed links based on that historic connection. And since the 7th century, therefore, our links have grown from strength to strength, and obviously particularly when we joined the European Union in the 1970s. We want to strengthen our connections, as the Prime Minister has said. We're like-minded in terms of the big challenges facing Europe. We discussed today in particular competitiveness and resilience, and how we position the European economy for the future, given the changing nature of what's happening globally in terms of tariffs and so forth. Europe has to become more competitive, more efficient and more effective. And I think the most effective way of doing that is to really develop more strongly the single market and the Savings and Investment Union, which we spoke in depth about. And we do need to simplify the regulatory frameworks, reduce the administrative burdens, and deepen the single market in fast evolving services in particular. We discussed high energy costs in Europe, acceleration of renewables from our perspective, investing in our grid, and again cooperating into the future in that area. We want Europe to become the best place to set up, grow a business and grow at scale. And that means a modernised digital environment, stronger investment in research and innovation. We discussed the multi-financial framework, the MFF, that has been proposed by the Commission. I think we both share the high priority that's been attached to Horizon, for example, and the research investment there. But we do need much deeper capital markets to finance innovative young companies and firms. And that's something that I'm very conscious of. And given the fact that Luxembourg, Ireland and some others are particularly strong in the financial services area, financial markets and funds industry, that's an area I think we can share expertise and knowledge and lead to a proper evolution of a savings and investment union, as you say, without getting overly focused on the idea of central supervisory regulation. The Commission, in terms of the budget, has made its proposal. It will be negotiated in the coming months, and we will participate in that. But I think we're both agreed that Europe needs a budget that's fit for the future. And newer challenges are coming our way, and we've discussed the importance of competitiveness in particular, and making sure that we fund the areas of the future, in addition to ensuring ring-fenced funding for the agriculture and farming area. And that's obviously very critical in Ireland's context, and I know your own agricultural minister has similar views in terms of the common agricultural policy. We discussed international issues, including the Middle East, where the humanitarian catastrophe that is Gaza must be addressed with urgency, and in particular the need to have a surge of humanitarian aid going into Gaza. It's absolutely appalling what is happening, and people are horrified by the suffering that children and the starvation that children are encountering. We reiterated and spoke about our support for Ukraine, conscious of the very significant increased and intensive attacks from Russia in terms of drones and missile attacks on civilian infrastructure, and represents a very significant existential threat, not just to Ukraine, but the European Union and members of the European Union in particular. We're looking forward. I briefed Luke in terms of our forthcoming presidency in the second half of next year, and this visit, I think, will lead to stronger cooperation in some of the key areas, particularly the defence cooperation in terms of innovation and so forth, and in the areas of energy and so forth.
Thank you very much. Up to you for questions. Yep.
Thanks. Just a question for you, Taoiseach, in relation to the tariff negotiations. We're hearing now that the EU is pushing for this 15% cap to include pharmaceuticals. What's your opinion on that talks are still ongoing and nothing's agreed till everything's agreed. But would that be, what kind of an impact would that have on Ireland if 15% tariffs on pharmaceuticals were to come into play? And then more broadly, taking a step back, we were at suppose a 10% deal. Trump then disregarded that, and it's now at 15%. Look, where's the EU's red line in your opinion?
Well, I think the bottom line, first of all, I would say that tariffs are not good, and both our countries are open, free trading countries, so we don't like tariffs. We're small, open economies, but we trade a lot, and we export most of what we produce, both in goods and in services. So we don't like tariffs. But we are where we are in terms of the US position, and US had issues, we accept that in terms of trade. But I don't want to speculate too much as the negotiations are continuing, because you are correct, we thought we had a deal 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that didn't materialize in terms of how people thought it might. So we're at a similar juncture now in terms of negotiations. The overall balance is, can we get some degree of certainty for industry and business and for countries in respect of this negotiation process? And what we would look for in terms of where this lands is certainty and clarity for the foreseeable future, for industry and for governments. Because the uncertainty and the volatility is creating a pause in a lot of investment decisions. And that's bad for the global economy, and it's bad for our respective economies. So we haven't looked at this through the prism of red lines, but obviously Europe understands, how far it can negotiate, and they will obviously, they're keeping all the member states informed, and they're sounding us out. But always remember that a trade war would have very, very damaging impacts and serious impacts on the economy and on societies. So Europe has always preferred to negotiate and to resolve these issues through dialogue, and that's the preferred course of action.
Liam Nolan, RT News. Also a question for the Taoiseach. Taoiseach, you mentioned the need for stability there for businesses. Do you believe that the proposed package of reciprocal tariffs that EU member states have approved, that would be placed on over 90 billion euros worth of US imports, do you think that's enough at this stage to dissuade the Trump administration from introducing those threatened 30% tariffs? And secondly, a question for Prime Minister Friedman as well. Does Luxembourg have any red lines of its own in terms of reciprocal tariffs? Would your government consider supporting taxing digital services?
Well, just to say that in terms of, again, where we are now, I'm not going to sort of preempt the outcome of these negotiations. This could change again in the next 7 days. And so it's, the point I would make, just as these tariffs will have impacts. Whatever figure we land on will have a negative impact on companies, on businesses, on consumers, and on patients potentially in terms of pharma. The latter part of your question was the question about do you think it will dissuade
the Trump administration from introducing these tariffs by August 1st?
Well, it depends.
The 30%.
No, I think the hope is that we'll have a negotiated agreement before August the 1st. If we don't have a negotiated agreement, well then everybody is in a much different situation, which would be very serious for both the US and Europe and the world, because the US trading relationship is the biggest in the world, so it would have impacts all over.
First of all, I share the Taoiseach's view that tariffs are very bad for trade. We believe in open, free and fair trade. And we know that the United States are an important economic partner for us. So we are therefore always were supportive of the negotiation approach that the European Commission took, not fighting back immediately with tariffs, but saying, okay, let's sit down with our American partners and look for negotiated solution. So my first point is that we must make sure that we have no tariffs or as little tariffs as possible. Second point is that I think with friends and partners you should not have red lines, but you should make it clear also to your negotiating partner that they cannot do just anything with us. So if necessary, you need to have credible countermeasures. Now we are not at that stage yet because these negotiations are ongoing. The Luxembourg government is not in the negotiating seat because trade is a competence of the European Commission, given to the European Commission by treaty. So obviously the Commission consults with us. The President von der Leyen has on several occasions called the prime ministers, the heads of state and government, to discuss these issues, but it's for them to negotiate it. Finally, I think that we should be very reluctant to accept asymmetric tariffs because that cannot be the sustainable long-term way forward. Because again, among partners, you may discuss certain issues. If there are imbalances, you can temporarily adjust these imbalances, but we hope that we get a deal with the United States that allows us also in the future to have more free trade on goods and services in the mutual interest. Again, I think transatlantic trade is key for our economies, also for our financial services sector. I think the same goes for Ireland. So we are not in a spirit of trade war with the United States, but we should make it clear to the US administration that we want them as partners and not as in a situation of a permanent conflict. So let's hope that in the coming days an acceptable agreement can be found.
Prime Minister Frieden, Ireland benefits from a withholding tax deal with the US, securing its dominance in the ETF market. Your government has taken steps to make a dent in that, for example, abolishing the subscription tax. What hopes would you have of securing a similar deal with the US? And my question to both of you, you have spoken of being competitors, but to what extent are your financial centres also threats to each other's economies?
Well, first of all, on the first point, we are not in the process of negotiating anything like that with the United States. So we have, as far as I'm aware, we have no negotiations ongoing on a double tax treaty with the US. And then the second part of the question was that between Ireland and Luxembourg. Well, first of all, we both believe, and we discussed that also in our working meeting, we both believe in competitive economies. And that goes both domestically and at the European level. And therefore, we encourage very much the European Commission under President von der Leyen to make sure that the regulatory burden diminishes, that we have a simplification of the rules, in particular also for small and medium-sized companies, but also for the financial services sector. The first proposals that the Commission made under the term of omnibus laws regarding CSRD and CSDD are going into the right direction, but we must make sure that we have a business-friendly environment. And I would say that even more so if we have a challenge with our trading partners outside of the European Union. We must make sure that we can produce more in the European Union, that we can create jobs there, that we have more free trade agreements with other parts of the world, so that our economies that are largely built on export of goods and services can also flourish in the future. So I don't see Ireland as I see Ireland as a friendly competitor, as I said, but competition is something positive. It stimulates us to make sure that our economies can develop for the benefit of our people. That's why you are active in politics, to make sure that the standard of living of the people gets better, that jobs are created. And I think if that succeeds to the Irish and to the Luxembourgers, it's for the benefit of all of us. So competition is something positive, and the fact that we stand here together shows that we are friends, that we align on many issues, and we are stronger if we are together. If we sit at the European Council and we argue in favor of less regulation or simplification of regulation, then we achieve much more than if we do that on our own.
Absolutely. I would remove the word threat to each other's respective economies because, first of all, at European level, given that we have this, we support the same principles around economic development and enterprise. That's a positive. So we are like-minded at the EU, which means when we argue in terms of simplification of regulation or a more pro-enterprise policy, that actually helps both of us and can avoid what would be real threats to both of us, which would be an over-bureaucratic, regulated framework at times. But also, healthy competition is essential in life. When you don't have competition, your demise begins. That's true of any walk of life. You must have competition to get you to innovate, to change, to adapt, to improve. If you don't have competition, you actually begin, that's the beginning of your decline in life. And also what I witnessed today, I went to the Cairn Group, an Irish Luxembourg company now, because they're based both here, they're based in Kilkenny and Dublin in Ireland. There's people working here who are in touch with Dublin. So actually what you will see probably evolving in the Savings and Investment Union of the future is greater synergies between people who know funds industry, who know the financial services industry. And that's something that will evolve over time. So it's a good relationship. Yes.
Hi, Sarah Collins from the Business Post. A question for the Taoiseach first. Apologies for bringing back to domestic issues, but I know. There has been speculation.
Good for me.
I have also a question for you, Prime Minister. For the Taoiseach, there's been speculation at home that the VAT rate, there will be a lower VAT rate on hospitality, but it may be delayed until next summer. Will this ever come in, do you think? Is it something you favour, or was it more of a sort of Fine Gael programme for government to ask? And to Prime Minister Frieden, at the moment the OECD is looking into deferring the 15% minimum tax rate, at least for a while. I don't know if you see this as part and parcel of some sort of grand deal with the US, but what does Luxembourg feel about that? How important is it that this is finalised soon? And do you think it will help in doing a final trade deal with the US? Thank you.
The programme for government has been agreed by all parties, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the independent group, and all three are committed to the implementation of the programme for government. I'm not going to engage in a rolling commentary in respect of the budget on a day-by-day basis, because the budget's on October the 7th, and it would be a long rolling commentary if we were to begin it now in July. We have all of August, all of September, and the first week of October. And so I'm not going to join those who are spinning or briefing or whatever on this matter, or doing, because I'm not going to speculate. Obviously, as has been said, the backdrop is tariffs. We'll have to assess this closer to budget day in terms of what's possible and what's not possible. Fundamentally, the protection of jobs and through the National Development Plan published yesterday, the creation of new jobs is our key priority. And we do have to protect employment in the currently turbulent situation we are experiencing.
On the other question, we have always argued in these issues for a level playing field. So if one of the countries, and indeed a very important country, a very important economy, the largest economy in the world, is leaving, seems to indicate that it's leaving that consensus on that question, then obviously we have to review our position as well. So I mean, the OECD was a consequence of discussions within G7, and so we need to carefully consider what our reaction to that should be. But again, our position has always been level playing field. That's why we agreed to certain of these things within the OECD, and we can only encourage the other members of the OECD to stick to that line as well. But if one steps out, I think the others have to review whether they still feel committed to that agreement or not. So, thank you very much. And now it's time for us to do some cultural visit of Luxembourg. And thank you for your presence here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you indeed.
You are not a threat to me.
No.